What's up, everyone? It's Brian from the Exact IT Solutions YouTube channel, and welcome to another video where we educate you about all things cybersecurity and what's going on out there in the world around cybersecurity and how you can protect yourself. So today's video, it's going to be kind of a quick one, guys. I just want to go into, because I'm seeing it a lot in the news, the Microsoft Azure DB, this Cosmos DB, that's been exploited, or at least a vulnerability has been found in it, and there's known exploits that work against it. I'm going to talk about that and get into that and let you know what's going on, so you can stay informed and educated and protect your customers and your environments. So this Cosmos DB, there's they added this thing called Jupiter X, I believe it's called. And the Jupiter X, or the Jupiter Notebooks, it's called. And what the Jupiter Notebooks does is it allows database managers to kind of work with the database. And this is something that Microsoft rolled out earlier in 2021, but they didn't turn it on by default. And then they did turn it on by default on everybody's account, so everybody had this available. So it ended up impacting about 3,300 Microsoft clients. And in a nutshell, guys, what hackers were able to do, or what these security researchers were able to accomplish, was without any privilege, they were able to gain access to basically anybody's database on Azure. Now, this is like the central database for Azure. So if you could get control of this, you can get control of a lot of other things that your company may be using this system for. So it's a big deal. And you could write to the database, you could read it, you could upload to it, and you could even delete it from what they found. So Microsoft has basically said at this point that, that they've looked at this, they've patched it, it's no longer an issue, but we're not sure if it's really been exposed in the wild. While we have no direct evidence of that, and we see that it's really not being exploited in the wild, at the same time they're giving guidance to every customer to assume that you've been breached, and that's how you're to handle this. So they're asking you to look at your telemetry, look at your logs, and make sure that you weren't one of the companies that may have been breached because somebody else found this before the Israeli company Wiz did. The Wiz security researchers who disclosed this in early August were actually awarded $40,000 and work with Microsoft on closing up this vulnerability. But we have companies to the likes of ExxonMobil, Coca-Cola, Citrix, and even Walgreens going in and saying that they use this as part of their company. Now, there's a lot more companies involved here than the ones I just rattled off right there, but you got to look at what kind of supply chain types of attacks that this could introduce when you're talking about companies like Citrix. When you're talking about Citrix and them using this and their information possibly being exposed, that could be a big deal. So, I want to hear from you guys. Are you guys users of this Cosmo DB or the Jupiter Notebooks? Are you familiar with this? Is this something that you're have been exposed to? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear who's experienced, who has experience with this, who's dealing with it, because we see a lot of Fortune 500 companies use this system, and this is one of those big deals where an IT provider like Microsoft, everybody tends to think, well, like, we're with Azure, we're with Microsoft, we're secure, and then things like this come out, and you realize how quickly that sometimes you get a false sense of security when you think your supply chain has you protected. I mentioned in my last video that I talk to CEOs all the time, and they tell me that they have the best of the best. But the reality of it is you can't rest your laurels on the fact that you think you have the best of the best. So Azure's been has a major vulnerability has been exposed for Azure. They've cleaned it up. But they're saying you need to still check your logs in your database at this point. So if anything new comes out, I'll bring it out to you guys. Remember, this is on top of Microsoft dealing with the Microsoft Exchange exploit, which is now still being used, exploited in the wild. And Lockbit ransomware is actually being deployed as a result of it. This is a little different because in that sense, private businesses and individuals are responsible for patching that. In the Azure case, Microsoft can patch it. So a lot of people are going to say that this is a kind of like a notch in the hat for Microsoft in terms of why people should be in the cloud, because now they can patch it very quickly, and then this vulnerability doesn't exist anymore. Where if you look at something like the Microsoft Exchange breach, it's really on individuals and individual companies to patch these vulnerabilities, and if they don't do it, the vulnerability is still out there. So what are your thoughts on that, using, really relying on cloud services to kind of get rid of these vulnerabilities and putting the onus of patching on companies like Microsoft and Amazon? Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? Jury's still out for me on that one. Simply because a company has the ability to patch the whole entire ecosystem doesn't really mean it's more secure, right? So what are your thoughts on that? I'd love to hear it in the comments. So, but that's where we're at. Microsoft Azure Cosmo database has a vulnerability that's now been patched, but it's in the news because it affects a lot of big companies, and that exploitation vector was out there for a very, very long time prior to this getting fixed. So see you on the next video. Hope you all have a good weekend. Take care.